Unspoken Issues.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unspoken Issues, the 90s comic podcast right here on the Source Material Comics feed. My goodness, we have returned. We've got another discussion here based on a poll that we put out there for our Unspoken Decade Facebook fans. And I'm not alone. Chris Armstrong is over there, and he's going to tell everybody all about what exactly we are getting into here. Chris, what was the poll about? What led to it? What was your thoughts?
Yeah, one of the kind of signatures of it, especially the second half of the 90s in comics, was Wizard Magazine.
Yep.
They got pretty cozy with Marvel and DC and other comic companies with promotions and stuff. And one of the things they did a lot, especially in the later half of the 90s, was these one-half issues that they would package with the Wizard Magazine. They would also do mail away, I think, issues sometimes as well. I think I actually having trouble remembering if the one-half issues were mail-aways or if they actually came packaged with...
Yeah, it's funny because I just worked on a podcast this morning where we were talking about... It was me, Dean, and Derry. We were discussing the Astro City half issue.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked the exact same question. I was like, were these packaged? And they're like, no, this was coupon. You had a deadline date. You had to send the coupon in along with your money in order to get it mailed to you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, these were things like you had to... And just real quick, I never did that for a half issue. Did you?
I have obtained some half issues over the years. I don't remember if I actually mailed away for any or if I got them secondhand at like a comic shop or whatever.
Gotcha.
So I read Spider-Girl off of the app, and I found I might have a Divine Right half issue, but I just found it online to read it for our discussion. And it may also be included in some of the collections of the Divine Right material, although it may not because of how it was written. We'll get into, I guess, when we talk about it. But there were two clear front runners in the poll that we did, and they kind of swapped back and forth as far as who was in the lead. I think we ended up tied in the voting with Spider-Girl one half and Divine Right, The Adventures of Max Faraday, number one half. The other two options were Nightwing one half and Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, number one half.
Yeah. Star Wars coming in with 4 votes.
Hey, one of them was mine. With the poll, I did one Marvel book, a DC book, an Image book, and then a Dark Horse book, which are kind of the big publishers throughout the decade. I wanted to kind of pick, have a variety of the options in that way. The books we're going to talk about, there's not a whole lot to discuss with the actual content of each issue.
Right.
There's a lot of interesting stuff kind of around, like with the MC2 stuff and the way the one half Divine Right issue came to be is kind of interesting.
Let's start with the shortest one first then. Ladies and gentlemen, you get a bonus here. Since there was a tie, 31 to 31 votes, then we are going to do both Divine Right, The Adventures of Max Faraday, and Spider-Girl, both half issues. So let's do the shortest one first, which is definitely going to be Divine Right. So I'll ask you before we get into that, Divine Right, were you collecting or are you familiar with the story behind that? Because I don't think I've picked up a single issue or know anything about that comic.
I was all over Divine Right when it came out. I was really excited that Jim Lee was... When I got back into comics after that little hiatus I had in the mid-90s, he did Fantastic Four, and then he kind of was gone for a while. Like, he hadn't done anything else for a while. I think he did maybe 6 issues of the Fantastic Four Heroes Reborn run. Maybe he did... I think Wildcats number 50 came out maybe in that gap. Then he maybe did some pages in that. But then his big return was Divine Right, and it wasn't super successful, I don't think. It ran about 12 to 13 issues, and then there were some specials that had the Wildcats and Gen 13, as the story kind of climaxed. There were, special with other Wildstorm characters. But I really thought it was cool. It was using internet, which was the first, had just become, really commonplace in people's households and stuff. This time, in 98, I think is when it came out, maybe 97. I thought it was a pretty cool concept, and the thing is, I reread all these Divine Right issues a couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I don't remember anything about it. I remember very little about the story outside of the basics. So it didn't leave a great impression as when I was a teenager, and it didn't leave much of an impression when I reread them as an adult not too long ago. But it looks pretty. It sure looks pretty.
Oh, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
Another thing I wanted to mention, I don't know when this quote was. It was probably in the late 90s, early 2000s when Todd McFarlane had done an interview, probably in Wizard or in some magazine or something, asking him if he was going to come back and do art. Because at that time, he had only done Spawn for a while, and then he did the Spawn Batman crossover, and then he kind of quit doing monthly comics. And he had a quote that basically was like, I'm not even sure I should. I don't have the exact quote, but the gist of it was, I'm not even sure I should come back. Jim Lee came back with Divine Right. Nobody gave a shit. So, like, would anybody care if I was doing comics again?
I think I might have seen one. I may own an issue of this, but honestly, one of those comics, one of those stories, the characters, no idea what was happening in this book. No clue. Late 90s Image for me. I was kind of out at that point. I was probably collecting pretty faithfully up through 96, and then I had to, graduating, going into college, have a limited. I started playing Magic. Magic the Gathering started to take a little bit of that comic book chunk of change, and I essentially stayed with the X books and Marvel. So a lot of like late 90s Image. Me and you've talked some books on here. Crimson. I don't know if you remember when we talked about that. I had no idea who that was. And all those kind of late characters that were kind of getting introduced into the Image universe, including this one, was one that I didn't have the time to collect nor was paying attention to. So yeah, this is my first ever Divine Right reading. I've never read anything else. So yeah, this is kind of introducing me into the world of Divine Right, which is actually, this is kind of a good book to do that. You learn a lot about the characters. They do a good job of introducing you to the world, and it's an extremely short story. It's still good enough to kind of get you a kind of a foothold in Max Faraday's world. Now, I think you might have wanted to bring this up, which, by the way, Divine Right, the copy I was looking at actually had this was in Wizard number 80, I guess. This was where you could get the mail off ticket or whatever, the coupon for this. Yeah. So this was Wizard magazine number 80 that you could get this, sent away for this. But this also has the distinction, there was a contest or something that happened, right?
Yeah, in the back matter after maybe a 10-page story, there's a sketchbook, and then there's like a note from Jim Lee. I had no memory of this. It was probably advertised in the Divine Right issues, but yeah, he mentions in the back this issue is the first Divine Right story that he did not write himself. It was part of a unique contest with Wizard magazine where fans submitted their own story ideas featuring the heroes of the series, and the winner would be chosen by Jim Lee and Wildstorm, and then Jim Lee would draw the issue himself. So and the writer's name, let me see if I can find it again here. Dominic Cabello, maybe?
Yeah, that's what I went with.
I looked into him a little, just Googling him. The only thing I could find is a Dominic Cabello, who is an artist on Instagram, and he does some superheroes art, and I think he might be the same guy that made a little bit of news for drawing superhero stuff on his kids' lunch bags, and that was like a news story at some point.
Oh, interesting.
Now, is this the same Dominic Cabello? I have no idea. The only connection is the name and the fact that he does artwork.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find any references to him in connection to this comic as far as the guy that I found on Instagram. So who knows?
Yeah. Mike's Amazing World of Comics has him credited for one comic book, so it's not like his brush with Jim Lee fame here actually took him to too many places, at least as far as Mike's Amazing World goes. I think this is the only thing he's credited for, but damn, what a thing to have, like, kind of tell people. Jim Lee drew a story that I came up with, and damn, that would be a fun one to kind of just whip out amongst your comic book friends. But yeah, it sounds like Jim Lee had to, when he was making this decision, he wanted to make sure that obviously the stuff he was picking would fit well within the continuity of the comic. And my understanding is Divine Right had been going on for just a little bit at this point. It had been around for, I'm sure, a handful of issues. So it's not like the half issue is where we're starting. It's ladies and gentlemen, if you're not familiar with comic books and their numbering, 0 issues, half issues have a tendency to come out after a comic book has already been established.
Maybe even a -1.
That's right, even a -1. So yeah, this is.
I don't have a release date, but the cover date for Divine Right #1 is September '97.
September '97.
Yeah, and this was in July '98, so 6 months later.
Yeah. So, yeah, unless there's anything else, I'll go ahead and jump into the synopsis, and we'll kind of talk about some things here. So, the issue opens in a medieval fantasy setting where Max Faraday and Devin Lawless? Is that his last name? I cannot remember.
I believe so.
Okay. Devin Lawless appear as armored knights fleeing across the battlefield while under attack from monstrous bloodhounds sent by the villainous forces of the Wrath, likely under the control of Cardinal Lazarus. As the creatures close in, Max desperately raises his hand to defend himself and unexpectedly unleashes a burst of cosmic energy that vaporizes one of the attacking hounds. A second hound is taken down moments later by Agent Christine Blaze, who arrives just in time to assist them. Blaze reveals that Max has recovered the final 2 pieces of the mysterious creation equation, and Max hands the scrolls over to her before she departs. The scene shifts to a peaceful keep where Max is being tended to by a beautiful woman who praises his bravery and calls him a knight, clearly enamored with him. Just as the moment turns romantic and she leans in to kiss him, an alarm suddenly sounds, and Max jolts awake in his bed in San Diego, revealing that the entire sequence may have been a dream. His sister, Jenny Faraday, is already up and impatiently telling him to get ready for work. Max excitedly recounts the strange dream about demons, knights, and mysterious women, but Jenny dismisses it as nonsense and reminds him he has responsibilities. The two exchange sarcastic banter, with Max insisting that the dream felt like a glimpse of his future and that something big is about to happen, while Jenny cuts him down with a practical reminder about rent and reality. The issue ends with Max convinced that good things are coming, unaware that his strange dream may be closer to reality than he realizes. I'll go ahead and let you go first here. You're more familiar with the property. I'm getting introduced to this thing. What's your thoughts?
It's pretty solid. I think a lot of these half issues are probably being used as almost like advertisements. Like, hey, this is a collectible issue for Wizard, like a reason for people to buy Wizard and get the opportunity to buy these special issues. But you're not going to put stuff in these issues that are super relevant to the ongoing. Like, if you don't want the regular readers to feel like they're missing out, issues aren't going to have like super important stuff in them. So it's more to like give you an idea, and we'll see that even more, I think, in the Spider-Girl issue. Like, it's just kind of to give you an idea what the book is like and stuff like that. And this kind of does that, although it's also in this like medieval setting, which isn't really accurate to what the story, because it's set in like late 90s, I think, LA.
Oh, really? So I thought for sure, I was like, oh, so this is what this book's about. This is about some guy who goes back in time or some alternate medieval reality or something. Okay.
No, this dream sequence is basically just like, almost seems to be almost like a premonition from Max of like, because these demon characters that they're fighting, I think they're called the Wrath. Mm-hmm. Those do exist in what would be Max's future. And Sienna Blaze is a character that shows up in Max's future, but like he's kind of getting a premonition of these events in this dream. When these things happen to him in his real life, it's in his modern day setting.
Got it.
But we do get some pretty cool Jim Lee artwork. And one of the things I liked about Divine Right, especially at the time, and we don't even see him in this issue other than in the character bios at the beginning, the Fallen are kind of like these angelic warriors that basically help Max and try and protect him from the bad guys and stuff. They're really a kind of cool design, Jim Lee design characters that I enjoyed watching or reading about through Jim Lee's stylistic pencils. Anyway, but we don't really see him much here. And then the girl is apparently his internet love interest that is the character in the book as well that we get to know more of, named Jenny Chaste, which is, that's interesting name.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, there's not a whole lot to this. It's kind of just like a little fun side story for the characters and stuff that But a very cool idea of them to do like a contest with Wizard to like let a fan submit these story ideas. And he mentions in the letter in the back how they were kind of had to immediately dismiss some stuff that was like would conflict with continuity and stuff like that.
Right, right.
But yeah.
Yeah, man. Again, like I said, being introduced to these characters and this story, this is a decent way to do that. Getting chosen as much as Spider-Girl really kind of made me go, wow. There's a lot. Now, granted, it's the Unspoken decade. There's going to be a lot of love for Jim Lee, guaranteed. But if anybody read this, really, there isn't a whole lot here to this story. It's a dream sequence. There's some awesome Jim Lee art to it, and I'm sure that has to be like the one of the foundations as to why this thing won, or at least tied Amazing for Spider-Girl. But yeah, you cannot go wrong with Jim Lee penciling something. Some of the stuff is breathtaking. He can definitely draw some ladies, that's for sure. But yeah, this is your typical had a dream that or an action sequence that kind of gets wiped away by a dream, and lo and behold, our poor protagonist here is going to have to go about living his actual real life, and that includes a job and paying rent. So yeah, I don't really have a whole lot else to say about this thing, man. It was good. It was a lot of Jim Lee fluff, and it's kind of a nice way to get you involved into and introduced to the people that are involved in Divine Right. We, in our bios here, we get mention of, you mentioned the Fallen. Let's see, I think Dominique Faust, she doesn't show up in here, but she's mentioned in the bios. And I think the others are, like, it's Lady Blaze that shows up.
Right.
She's in her medieval whatever in his dream. But so you said he's got a girlfriend that's going to be involved here is...
Yeah, he has like an internet chat girlfriend that he's never met, that I think he tracks down early on in this, like within the first like 4 or 5 issues. But it's interesting, like in the first issue, there's I don't know if you read these, I don't even know what the bios specifically say. It doesn't look like they do, but like basically the point in the first issue, Max is at an internet cafe. And actually, I'm sorry, that's Sienna Blaze ends up at the internet cafe. But
oh, okay.
Max basically gets this creation equation downloaded into his brain. It's kind of like Chuck, that the TV show with Zach Levy.
Yeah, and he's able to do all
Best Buy guy.
Right.
And he gets like all this stuff downloaded into his head. That's kind of what the creation equation thing is with Max. Like he's just this pizza delivery guy, slacker guy that is kind of good with computers, and then he gets this thing downloaded into his brain, and eventually that gives him superpowers and stuff like that. Yeah, he's got like an internet girlfriend that he eventually meets up with. Yeah.
Okay. Late 90s. That's pretty nascent. Very, very interesting.
I remember reading in the back of one of those early Divine Right issues when I reread the series a couple years ago that Jim Lee talking about, he was really excited because he was writing this himself. He might have had a scripter. I don't remember. He probably did, but the story was his, and he was still really excited to get into it and everything. And I think he hit one point in one of his early scribes in the back talked about how he was going to do at least 30 issues or something like that. Like regardless of how well it sells or whatever, he was sticking to it for the long run. They ended up doing like 12 issues.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
You know,
I don't blame him. If it's not productive to continue doing it, then that's fine.
This would have been, so that probably went into 99, early 2000, maybe, well, probably late 99. So yeah, I don't know when he takes his stuff to DC.
I believe that the sale to DC happened, like, I think the book was still being published when the sale happened.
Okay. Interesting. All right, man. Well, let's go ahead and pick a panel. I'll let you go first.
I'm going to go with the first page, a splash page of Max and Devin being attacked with fiery arrows, holding the shield up to protect them. Max holding up the shield to protect himself.
Yeah. It's funny. We love our splash pages for sure. Mm-hmm. But when you got a Wizard half issue that's 10 pages... and then like there's a good bit of back matter as far as like the scripting and sketches, which is great, but my goodness,
there's also a double page splash.
Yes, there is. And focusing on yours real quick, yeah, that's a really cool, it's a great way to open things up. Again, it's a great action sequence. Max in his armor here with his sword in hand, shield, and trying to block what I believe are flaming arrows getting shot at him. And Devin, who... Is Devin like his good friend in the book too?
Yeah, he's like his smarmy sidekick type guy.
So yeah, my panel clearly is going to be this lovely lady that we have 2-page spread of nameless, raven-haired, barely clothed woman that is attending to Max's wounds. Well, it's so funny. As he woke up, I didn't know which part was the dream until he finally explained it was all a dream. Because I was like, oh, maybe he was just dreaming that about this girl. But no, he's dreaming about the whole thing. But yeah, Jim Lee and Curvy Ladies. So that's an easy pick for my adolescent brain to go with. But yeah, and when you got a double-page spread and a half issue, again... My gosh, you are using the space that you have to the max. Not a whole lot to the story, but good enough. So anyway, anything else here that you would like to point out before we move on to our second story?
Just like in relation to the poll again, where this tied with that Spider-Girl series, which Spider-Girl, I was never like a big fan. I had some of the issues early on in its run, but it was a book that had a huge... or at least a very vocal fan base. And it's kind of interesting, like it's almost like a style over substance thing, where one half of the vote is all about the flashy Jim Lee book, and then the other half is about the old school Spider-Girl comic that's like evoking old school comic sensibility.
Yeah, silver, almost like some Silver Age kind of stuff here. Yeah. For sure.
That was kind of interesting.
I agree 100%. I did not give the creative team, I better do that before I forget, of Divine Right. Let's see. Our script by Dominic Caballo, Andy Hartnell, Jim Lee pencils, Jonathan Seibel on inks, colors and effects by Tad Ehrlich, and letters by Richard Starkings, and comic crafts Albert Duchesne, I believe, or Duchesne, I think is what we're seeing there. So that's our creative team for Divine Right 1/2. And now as we get into Spider-Girl 1/2, our creative team, Tom DeFalco and Ron Friends on script, plot, and pencils. Sal Buscema, rest in peace, finished art. Jack Morelli, lettering. Bob Sharon on coloring. So yeah, this came out, I think it has it listed here, 1990. Was that 98 as well? I'm trying to zoom in and make sure. No, 99. I'm sorry. Looks like they have it.
Yeah, I would say it's interesting that the Marvel app has, you can't trust their dates a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
Because they've got, let me pull it up here. On this, they've got, I think, this full Spider-Girl run, at least the first series, and it's got issue 0, issue 1/2, and issue 1 all coming out September 30th, 1998.
Really?
But this half issue takes place like it actually didn't come out until like a year into the run. Because they reference in this book events that haven't happened. Like, see, Fantastic 5.
Right.
They hadn't shown up, I don't think, at the time this book came out. The original book came out. Came in as like a second wave of the MC2 line or whatever.
Yeah, Spider-Girl.
Yeah, does Mike's Amazing World have a date for this?
Yeah, release date July 28th, 99, in between Spider-Girl number 12 and 13. So, yeah, and there was a Spider-Girl 1999 number 1. Is this an annual? Yeah, this would have been a 99 annual. But anyway, yeah, so it looks like it was July of 99. So, MC2.
Yeah.
Tell me all about what in regards to MC2.
Yeah, this Spider-Girl book, it's not bad, but like there's not a whole lot going on in it that we can really break down. But the MC2 is an interesting chapter in Marvel continuity of the late 90s especially. I'll just read from what Wikipedia says specifically. The MC2 universe was conceived by Tom DeFalco as a possible alternate future for the Marvel universe, set in the present day with the first appearances of most Marvel heroes having taken place 15 years earlier than in main continuity. So like the Spider-Girl book takes place in, not in the future, but like in modern day of like 1998, I guess. But the conceit is that in this world, all the original Marvel heroes had already kind of had their time, like
retired or gone on or become mentors.
So by the time the 90s showed up, it was the time for these MC2 characters to take the mantle of some of these characters. I believe it started because What If number 105 in 1998 was the Spider-Girl, like, first appearance. It was a What If issue, and it was like, what if Peter and Mary Jane's daughter was Spider-Girl or whatever. And it was a big success, and it kind of led to the MC2 line becoming realized with the Spider-Girl. Next, I think, was the Avengers book, J2, which was Juggernaut's son.
Right.
So I think those were the three titles that launched the MC2. I had all of the first issues. I think the only one I followed for much farther than 1 or 2 issues was maybe A Next. I might have kept with that for a little while, but I didn't stick with the MC2 titles for very long back then. Did you read any of that stuff?
No, I think I ended up with the What If, but I didn't get any MC2. It was kind of like the 2099 stuff where it was, okay, all new heroes. I've got to kind of get used to whoever these people are, and I just didn't have the brain power to want to restart again with learning who these people were. And if it wasn't affecting like modern current Marvel continuity, I wasn't going to read it. Yeah, why? Well, I didn't have the interest to do that. But the thing is, what I've learned is that there were some really good stories that were told in some of these issues. And I kind of want to go back at some point and revisit them just to learn what happened in there, because we get a taste, just kind of like what you're saying, how the 60s or the Silver Age kind of influences what we have here, because DeFalco and friends, they are, we could say that they're fans of that. You were...
Yeah, that's what they grew up reading, I would think.
And you've enjoyed Thunderstrike.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you...
Some of the DeFalco Fantastic Four I like.
Yeah, I'm sure you could probably draw parallels to the storytelling between Silver Age and some of the stuff that's happening here.
I was going to say, I do remember when I was reading these, when this imprint launched, that my feeling at the time as an 18-year-old, I guess when this launched, that the stories felt very old-fashioned, which they were.
Yeah.
But I think my reading on it was almost more like, well, these are more like for kids.
Yes.
Because there's not going to be a lot of violence in them.
Yep.
Because by this time, Image had come out. A lot of the grim and gritty stuff had happened.
Yeah.
And I'm leaning more, as a teenager, I'm leaning in more into that stuff. So I would see in these books as more like stuff for younger kids. And even though I kind of liked them, I didn't stick with them.
Yeah. One of the aspects that kind of calls to me, though, about these books are the kind of alternate takes on heroes. Now, granted, she came from a What If, but we are kind of moving on. So I don't mind. We don't just get a focus on Spider-Girl here. We get to meet some other people that are in that world. The Fantastic Five, you already mentioned. We get to meet Wild Thing.
Predating X-23 by several years, the first Wolverine's daughter.
Right.
Yeah. We mentioned Spider-Girl had a vocal fan base. That it was almost canceled several times, but Tom DeFalco would rally the troops and the fans, and they would raise enough of a stink, I guess, that Marvel would continue to publish it for a while. So it ended up making, I think, to 100 issues, and then there were some other Spider-Girl series after that. There was like an Amazing Spider-Girl and a Spectacular Spider-Girl, and I think she showed up in the Spider-Verse stories back in the Dan Slott era of Spider-Man and stuff. So not currently, I don't think, around, but still most likely we'll see her again at some point in the Marvel comics. So
yeah, too popular of a character, I think, to just kind of leave hanging, leave out there and not bring her back in for some type of... You mentioned Spider-Verse, you said, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, our story opens at Mayday Parker's high school, where May witnesses an unexpected pairing between her bookish friend Jimmy Yama and the socially ambitious Heather Noble. Jimmy cancels their usual study session to spend time with Heather, leaving May uneasy about her friend being taken advantage of. She decides not to interfere and heads home. On her way home past the South Precinct police station, May's spider sense suddenly goes off as two officers pass by. Trusting her instincts, she follows them into an alley and quickly changes into Spider-Girl. The officers are suddenly attacked by Wild Thing, the daughter of Wolverine, whose claws are revealed to be psychic projections rather than physical blades. Spider-Girl intervenes, leading to a fast-paced fight between the two young heroes. Their battle escalates when Wild Thing collapses part of a wall, temporarily burying Spider-Girl beneath rubble, though May protects herself with a web cocoon and re-enters the fight. The situation takes a turn when the police officers reveal themselves as villains in disguise. They drop their illusion, exposing themselves as Saberclaw and Enthralla, a mutant illusionist. Spider-Girl realizes her spider sense had correctly warned her that something was wrong. Just as Saberclaw is about to strike the recovering Spider-Girl, Wild Thing jumps back into the fight and greets him sarcastically as her big brother. I didn't say sarcasm, it's actually her big brother, revealing their family connection before knocking him aside. After briefly clearing up their misunderstanding, Spider-Girl and Wild Thing team up, knocking Saberclaw unconscious together. Enthralla then attempts to turn the tide using her illusion powers, claiming that once someone makes eye contact with her, she can make them see anything she desires. However, before she can unleash her abilities, she abruptly surrenders. Behind the heroes stand the Fantastic Five, including Human Torch, The Thing, Psylord, which I think is what he's going by here.
Yeah.
The second appearance of Skylord in so many weeks on the Unspoken Issues podcast. The adult Franklin Richards here. A Skrull, which I think is Lyja, the Laser Fist.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
I believe that she is Lyja Richards in the Fantastic Five era. That they're married.
And then our fifth guy is Big Brain. So let me just double check and make sure, because I think it looks like oh my goodness, he looks like a little android guy.
Yeah, he looks like a guy who would be called Big Brain because of his bulbous head.
Yeah, right. So with the villains captured, the team explains they responded to the police call, prompting Spider-Girl to wonder why the authorities contacted them instead of the New Avengers. The Fantastic Five suggest the police simply trust them more. Wild Thing jokes that things could have been worse. They might have called Jubilee and her uncanny X-people instead. Wild Thing is clearly starstruck by let's try it again, Psylord, admitting she's had his poster hanging over her bed for years. As the heroes depart, Spider-Girl swings away and remembers Jimmy. The next day at school, Jimmy is upset after Heather dumps him immediately after copying his math homework. May comforts him, advising that while a little skepticism is healthy, appearances can be deceiving. Reflecting on the previous night's misunderstandings, May notes that things aren't always what they seem, closing the story on a small personal lesson that parallels the superhero events. So I'll open things here. We mentioned how this Silver Age kind of feel, how this old sensible storytelling of comic books is on display here. I think one of the moments in this book that made me go, okay, this is definitely different as far as writing goes for late 90s. When Wild Thing and Spider-Girl are fighting, Wild Thing destroys the wall, it collapses on her, and then Wild Thing freaks out, worried she's hurt Spider-Girl. I love the Fantastic Five showing up. I love hearing about how we have these alternate heroes, which I think The Thing and Human Torch those two are the original two members.
I believe so, yeah.
Right. But yeah, having them show up here obviously is a lot of world building. But of course, Mayday has her high school woes, just like Peter Parker did back in his early issues. So, but there's a lot more meat on the bone here compared to what we got with Divine Right. There's definitely a lot more dialogue. There's a fight between some most likely very familiar analogs. What's the echoes? I think is where the characters are at least somewhat familiar. And watching Mayday go about her day, we don't even get to see Peter or Mary Jane in here, I don't think, at all.
No. Yeah. They were characters in the Spider-Girl book, though. They're part of the supporting cast, I think.
So, again, another great way to kind of introduce you to the world if this was, for some reason, your first issue of Mayday Spider-Girl here. But most likely it's not. I would assume if you're reading Wizard, who knows? I would like to have talked to the person that actually picked this up first before picking up any other issues of Spider-Girl. But Anyway, so I really don't again, it served its purpose. It's good storytelling. It's a little dense, but it's definitely, I can see where you're going as far as it being kind of juvenile compared to what we were used to as our late teens here. This clearly was meant for a different demographic than what we probably were in when we were reading back in the late 90s. I'll stop talking now. What's your thoughts?
I think I kind of second all of that. I think it's a pretty solid issue, but it doesn't seem like anything here affects what's going on in the book. Like I mentioned earlier, these half issues probably aren't going to do that.
Right.
Because of that, it feels a little disposable. But yeah, there's some good action, some good art and stuff. And I don't really care for this wild thing with like the psionic claws. That seems dumb. I don't have regular claws. Maybe that's explored in her own comic, like why maybe her claws manifest that way because of her dad or something. I don't know. In some of my like looking up stuff about these characters, I did notice, I don't think it's mentioned in here, but Saberclaw is actually her half brother.
Oh, her half brother. Okay.
He's also Wolverine's son. I couldn't find out who the mother is though.
Yeah. Kind of curious.
Yeah, but I like the design of Saberclaw. He looks pretty cool. He's got kind of like adamantium laced claws, but not like Wolverine style claws, but like claws on the end of his fingertips. Right. It's overall it's just a fun comic. I did want to mention, kind of going back to the What If issue that introduced this whole world, really. There's a scene, I was looking through that issue, and there's a scene where Peter goes to the Avengers for help. And the Avengers in that What If issue are Thunderstrike, Jubilee, Speedball, I guess Juggernaut too, although he has the Juggernaut brown colored armor, and Jolt from the Thunderbolts.
Oh, wow.
And they don't even really, they're just in one panel. They don't really have anything to do with the story, but I just thought that was interesting. And Jolt never showed up, I don't think, in the actual Next comic. I think they just kind of forgot about that or ignored that. May Parker is the character. I don't know if we mentioned that's the character's name, but her Spider-Girl suit is Ben Reilly's costume.
Yes, and it's I like that costume a lot. I think it looks.
And I should say it's not just the design, but it's actually Ben's costume that she found in Peter's attic.
Oh, really?
She found the costume, and Mary Jane was like, "That was your Uncle Ben's."
That's cool. That's pretty neat.
So she, I guess, tailored it to her physique or whatever, but that's actually the Scarlet Spider costume. So I thought that was cool.
Definitely. I love how Enthralla just like gives up. As soon as the Fantastic Five show up, she's just about to like make them see whatever. And then, okay, I give up. I surrender. Thought that was pretty cool.
But I've always been curious about Spider-Girl, and the whole series is on the Marvel app. So I'll probably dig into it some at least and see if it catches me more now than it did back then. I think I'll probably appreciate it more now than I did as a teenager, honestly.
It had a really healthy run, man. When you look at it, I'm on Mike's Amazing World. Spider-Girl #1 hits August of 98, and the final issue is Spider-Girl #100. It's issue 100. What a way to end it, too, in 2006. So That's a really decent run for really something that was pretty much outside of the modern Marvel continuity. So, all right. Well, did you have anything else there before we pick a panel?
I think that's all I got.
Okay. All right, then. Well, I get to go first this time, and I will land with the double punch where Spider-Girl and Wild Thing both sock Saberclaw. I'll call him Ripclaw. Really close. Really close, and I would have never heard the end of it. They both punch Saberclaw and send him backwards and knock his butt out. So there you go. But action-packed panel there.
Well, that leaves another full splash page for me where I've got the one where Spider-Girl is delivering the flying kick to Wild Thing.
Yeah.
That's page 5, full page spread.
Love it. Love it. Good stuff. Good stuff, man. All right, well, there it is. Let's get into plugs. What do you have going on over there on small screeners and Because Movies and anything else you got going on?
Yeah, I've got a couple of movie podcasts I do with my buddy AJ, small screeners, where we talk about direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies. We also have one called Because Movies, where we talk about just any kind of movie stuff we feel like. You can find those on your podcatcher of choice.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to this most likely on the Source Material Comics feed. We appreciate that. We've got the Unspoken Issues podcast here. All sorts of episodes in the can, so go check those out. It's 90s comics all the time. And then we have the Source Material Comics podcast, where we talk comic books of any era. And then, of course, Snap Material, where myself and Evan Bevins get together and talk Marvel Snap. So, again, we appreciate you guys being here. We'll talk to you soon. Probably talking about a new poll winner. 96 number ones is still going on. I plan on doing that all year. It's going to be a fun discussion. I think the next one, when we record, we'll be talking about Mr. Miracle number one. Do you know anything about Mr. Miracle?
I know he's a new guy. I've read the only Mr. Miracle stuff that I've really read is when he starts in like Justice League and stuff.
Yeah.
His name is Scott Free.
Scott Free. That's right. That's about as much as I do. So that should be a real fun, riveting, lore-laden discussion. It'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys, we're out of here. That's Chris Armstrong. I'm Jesse Starcher. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good one. Bye-bye.